Have you ever looked in the mirror, not to fix your hair or straighten your collar, but to truly see yourself and quietly wonder, is this part of my life just over? Not your career, not your parenting years, but something deeper, something more private. The longing for touch, for closeness, for the kind of intimacy that once made you feel deeply alive. Maybe you've come to terms with its absence. Maybe you've told yourself it's just part of aging. And maybe, like so many others, you've accepted the quiet assumption that intimacy belongs to youth, that desire is a flame meant only for smooth skin, fast energy, and early years. But what if that assumption isn't just wrong, it's harmful? What if giving up physical closeness doesn't just change your relationship, it begins to quietly affect your sleep, your memory, your heart, and even your sense of worth? What if letting go of intimacy is accelerating the very things we fear most about growing older? Loneliness, decline, and that haunting feeling of being unseen. This isn't about trying to turn back time or pretending to be 25 again. This is about honoring something that never stopped being true. You haven't aged out of love. You haven't outgrown desire. And no matter how long it's been, no matter what your past holds, you have not missed your moment. In fact, this moment right now, this chapter of your life, might be the most important one for reclaiming not just intimacy, but vitality. And if even the smallest part of you feels curious, stirred, or quietly moved, then stay with me. Because this message isn't about performance. It's not about pressure. It's about remembering something many of us were never taught. That intimacy after 60 isn't a luxury. It's not a bonus. It's a lifeline. In the next few chapters, we'll explore 10 powerful ways physical and emotional closeness directly impact your health, your happiness, and your longevity. After 60, after 70, even after 80. We'll look at the science, the stories, and the deeply human truth that never expires. You are still here, still worthy, still capable of love, connection, and being fully alive. So take a breath. Let the world slow down for a moment. And let this be a safe space, a space of truth, tenderness, and new beginnings. Because aging doesn't mean fading, it means deepening. And intimacy isn't just something you had once upon a time. It's something you can begin again, today. Part 2. The heart feels it first. Not always in the dramatic way we imagine, not with sharp pains or medical alarms, but in the quiet, everyday signals we often ignore. A subtle heaviness in your chest after a walk. A little shortness of breath when climbing stairs. You chalk it up to aging, assume it's just time doing what time does. But what if your heart isn't just getting older? What if it's quietly aching for something more human? You see, intimacy, especially in later life, isn't just a romantic notion. It's biological nourishment. When we're physically close to someone, whether through a gentle hug, a held hand, or deeper connection, our heart responds in powerful ways. Blood pressure lowers, circulation improves, inflammation retreats. It's as if the body receives a signal that says, you're safe, you're loved, you're not alone. On the flip side, when touch disappears, when days turn into months without closeness, our bodies register that loss in ways we don't always see right away. Stress hormones, like cortisol, stick around longer. The arteries begin to stiffen. The rhythm of our heartbeat becomes a little more irregular. And slowly, the body begins to carry more weight than it was meant to, emotionally and physically. This isn't about how often you're intimate or whether you're in a relationship. It's about presence, connection, the knowledge that someone still sees you, still reaches for you, still wants to be near you, not for who you were 20 years ago, but for who you are now. And if your heart has felt heavy lately, more than just physically, it might not be your age. It might be the silent ache of a heart that no longer feels needed, seen, or close to another human being. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Because The heart knows what the mind tries to forget. That closeness is not optional. It's essential. And it's never too late to give your heart what it's been quietly craving all along. Part 3. Your muscles and joints don't make loud complaints when they start to weaken. They whisper. A little stiffness when you get out of bed, a hesitation before climbing stairs, a slower rise from the chair you once stood up from without thinking. And while we often attribute these changes solely to aging, there's another silent contributor many people never consider: the loss of physical intimacy. You may not think of it this way, but every act of closeness, wrapping your arms around someone, shifting your hips to lean in, turning your body to welcome a hug, is movement. Gentle, natural, meaningful movement. It keeps your muscles engaged, your joints lubricated, and your balance intact. It's not exercise in the traditional sense, but it is one of the most instinctive ways the body stays active. Yet, when that kind of connection fades, the body gradually forgets. Muscles weaken, not always from disease, but from disuse. Joints grow stiff, not because they're broken, but because they're no longer being invited into motion. And movement, once effortless, begins to feel like effort. It doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slowly, until one day you realize you're avoiding the stairs, skipping your daily walks, and sitting more than you used to. The body you once trusted to carry you through the world now feels uncertain, hesitant. But here's the truth that deserves to be spoken aloud. You don't need a gym membership or perfect health to stay strong. What you need is connection, a reason to reach, a moment to move, and the quiet power of knowing that your body is still capable of closeness, of rhythm, of joy. Intimacy, even the most tender and subtle kind, keeps you in motion. And motion keeps you alive. So if you've been feeling stiff, disconnected, or physically smaller than you once were, ask yourself this: when was the last time you moved because you felt love? Because you reached for someone, not out of obligation, but out of longing? The body remembers those moments, and it can remember again. All it needs is a reason. Part 4. There's a kind of forgetting that sneaks in quietly as we grow older, not just where you left your keys or what day of the week it is, but something deeper. A soft mental fog, a dulling of the spark that once lit your thoughts with clarity and color. It's easy to blame age, and sometimes age is part of it, but often what we experience as forgetfulness or mental fatigue is actually a symptom of something more emotional: the quiet absence of connection. Because intimacy, true physical closeness, isn't just about desire, it's a neurological event. During a loving touch, a long embrace, or a moment of shared warmth, your brain releases dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins. These aren't just feel-good chemicals. They are the very signals that support memory, lift mood, regulate emotion, and enhance focus. They're the biological proof that love doesn't just live in the heart, it lives in the mind. And when those moments of connection fade, your brain notices, not with a bang, but with a slow drift. Thoughts become foggier, sleep becomes less restorative. Motivation slips away, not because you're lazy, but because your nervous system has lost one of its most important cues: closeness. Over time, anxiety may begin to creep in. A quiet loneliness settles beneath your thoughts, and you feel less yourself, not because you're broken, but because something essential has gone missing. Your brain, like every other part of your body, needs stimulation. Books help. Puzzles help. But nothing nourishes the mind quite like the spark of human connection. And so if you've been feeling forgetful, foggy, or just off balance mentally, ask yourself gently, when was the last time you felt held? Not just physically, but emotionally, neurologically, humanly? The mind may forget birthdays or details, but it never forgets how to feel connected. And the beautiful truth is, it never loses the capacity to remember again. One kind touch at a time. Part 5. Somewhere along the way, without anyone meaning for it to happen, love can start to grow quiet. You still share meals. You still talk about the bills. You still sit beside each other in the same room, but something shifts. There's a space between you where warmth used to live. Conversations become more practical than personal. Touch becomes rare. The bedroom goes silent, and slowly, what was once a relationship between partners begins to feel more like a quiet partnership between roommates. Not because the love is gone, but because the expressions of love have faded. What so many people forget is that intimacy is not just about sex. It's a language. It's how we say, without words, I still see you. I still choose you. I still want you close. When that language disappears, even the most enduring relationships can begin to feel empty. You start to miss something you can't name. You lie next to someone you've known for decades, but feel somehow alone. And that loneliness can be more painful than physical aging, because it's the loneliness of being unseen by someone who once knew you best. But here's what I want you to remember. Emotional intimacy doesn't disappear because of age. It disappears because we stop making time for it. We stop reaching out. We stop believing we deserve to be reached for. And yet, no matter how long it's been, it can be rediscovered. A gentle hand on the back. A kiss that lingers a second longer than usual. A question asked with genuine curiosity, not routine. These are small things, but they are also sacred things, because they say, I still care. I still see you. And in that seeing, something begins to shift. Even the deepest silence can be broken by one soft gesture. Even the most distant partners can find their way back, not through grand gestures, but through simple, repeated reaching. If your relationship has felt more like survival than connection lately, maybe the answer isn't falling back in love. Maybe it's learning how to reach for each other again, one small moment at a time. Part 6. Sleep doesn't always slip away in dramatic fashion. Sometimes it just slowly unravels, first with a restless night here and there, then with a body that won't settle, a mind that won't stop racing, a clock that keeps ticking into the early hours while you lie awake hoping rest will come. And for so many older adults, the reason behind that struggle isn't just physical discomfort or age-related changes. It's the quiet absence of closeness. After a moment of physical intimacy, especially one filled with safety and warmth, the body releases a powerful blend of hormones like prolactin and oxytocin. These aren't just romantic chemicals. They're the biological triggers for peace. Prolactin gently eases you into rest, helping the body unwind. Oxytocin, often called the cuddle hormone, lowers cortisol, calms the nervous system, and signals to your entire being that you are safe. Together, they create a natural rhythm for deep, restorative sleep, the kind that medications often try to mimic, but rarely match. When intimacy fades, so do those calming signals. The body remains tense, the mind stays alert. Sleep, instead of being a natural descent into restoration, becomes a nightly battle. And over time, this lack of deep rest begins to chip away at your energy, your mood, your memory, and your resilience. You wake up groggy, disconnected, or irritable. The small joys of morning, sunlight through the window, a warm cup of coffee, the sound of birdsong, feel duller somehow. But the truth is, what's often missing isn't just sleep. It's comfort, it's safety, it's the reassurance that comes not from silence, but from being close to someone, being touched, held, or simply known. And that doesn't require perfect health or a romantic partner. Even a soft touch on the shoulder, a hand held for a moment longer, or the presence of someone who makes you feel at ease can invite the body to rest. Because rest isn't just a physical act, it's an emotional surrender. And intimacy, in its truest form, is one of the most powerful lullabies we've ever known. Part 7. There's a kind of fading that doesn't show up in photographs or in the mirror, but you feel it. It's in the way you stop making eye contact with yourself. It's in the hesitation before putting on clothes that once made you feel beautiful. It's in the quiet resignation that maybe, just maybe, your most desirable days are behind you. For many older adults, the loss of physical intimacy brings more than silence in the bedroom. It brings a slow erosion of how they see themselves. Because when no one reaches for you, when no one touches you with warmth or affection, when desire disappears from your daily life, it's easy to start feeling invisible. Not because your body has changed so drastically, but because the world has stopped reflecting your beauty back to you. And over time, that invisibility becomes internal. You stop feeling radiant. You stop feeling worthy. You begin to believe, without saying it aloud, that you are no longer someone to be wanted. But here's the truth that no one says loudly enough. Physical intimacy is not about youth. It's about aliveness. When someone reaches for you, holds you, or looks at you with longing, not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire, it sends a message deeper than words. That message says, you still matter. You're still beautiful. You're still a body worthy of love, still a soul worthy of being seen. And that kind of message, whether it comes from a partner or from your own rediscovery of your body, can begin to change everything. Your shoulders straighten, your voice steadies. You walk through the world with a quiet kind of dignity again, not because your wrinkles disappeared, but because your sense of worth returned. Intimacy doesn't fix everything, but it reminds you of what's never left. Your capacity to give and receive affection, to feel alive, to take up space with pride. And if no one has told you this lately, let it be said now. You are still someone to be desired. Not despite your age, but because of the life you've lived through it. And that kind of beauty, that kind of presence, it's timeless. Part 8. As we grow older, we start paying closer attention to the things that protect us. A warm coat when the weather changes, a daily multivitamin on the kitchen counter, a walk in the morning sunlight to keep our body moving and our spirits lifted. But there's one powerful form of protection that is often overlooked, one that doesn't come in a bottle or require a prescription. Intimacy. Believe it or not, physical closeness, especially the kind that involves emotional safety and affection, has a measurable impact on your immune system. During moments of physical connection, holding hands, sharing a hug, or even engaging in gentle sexual intimacy, your body increases its production of immunoglobulin A, or IgA. This is a natural antibody, a frontline defender that plays a crucial role in protecting against colds, respiratory infections, and the kinds of viruses that tend to target older adults. Think of it as your body's quiet guardian, one that grows stronger not just from medicine, but from love. But that's not all. Regular physical intimacy helps regulate your hormone levels, lowers chronic inflammation, and supports the body's cellular repair systems. These are all things that contribute to a healthier, more resilient immune response. When touch fades, when closeness disappears from your life, these protective responses can weaken. And the effects often appear subtly. You catch colds more often than you used to. You feel run down for no clear reason. It takes longer to recover from something minor. You may never link those changes to the absence of intimacy, but your body knows. Your body misses the signals it once received through connection. The healing signals that said, you are safe, you are not alone, you are cared for. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to be wildly passionate or physically perfect to receive those benefits. Even gentle affection, shared warmth, an arm around your shoulder, someone brushing your hand while talking, can restore your internal defenses in ways science is only beginning to fully understand. Because real protection isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's soft. Sometimes it's human. Sometimes it comes in the form of being seen, being held, and being reminded that your body is not just surviving, but still capable of thriving. Part 9. Stress doesn't always come like a storm. Sometimes it drifts in quietly, settling into your shoulders, tightening your jaw, showing up in the way your breath shortens, or your thoughts won't stop circling at night. It can arrive disguised as restlessness, fatigue, or the vague feeling that something isn't quite right. And for many people in their later years, stress is often compounded by something they may not even realize they've lost: physical connection. You see, intimacy is more than an emotional bond. It's one of the most natural stress relievers the body was ever designed to experience. When you share a moment of closeness, whether that's a gentle touch, a warm hug, or a deeper form of physical affection, your brain releases a powerful blend of chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. These are not just the feel-good hormones, they're regulators. They bring balance, they tell your nervous system it's safe to let go. They lower cortisol, which is the stress hormone that quietly wears away at your energy, your mood, and even your immune function over time. That's why people often feel lighter, calmer, or even more emotionally open after a moment of real intimacy. It's not just the act, it's the physiological response. But when intimacy fades from your life, so does that natural balance. You begin carrying stress without realizing it. Tension stays in your muscles longer. Worry finds a home in your chest. You become more irritable or anxious, even if your days look peaceful on the surface. You start carrying the emotional weight of life alone, without the anchor of shared presence. And while meditation and deep breathing help, there's something uniquely healing about being close to another human being. Something that can't be replaced by a screen or solved by silence. Because sometimes what the body is truly craving isn't distraction, it's contact. Not to fix anything, but to remind you that you don't have to face everything alone. And that reminder, in its gentlest form, can be the beginning of real peace. Not the kind that hides from life's troubles, but the kind that stands through them, grounded in connection, carried by love, and calmed by touch. Part 10. Relationships rarely break all at once. They fray quietly, over time. One day, you're laughing about something silly, sharing stories you've told 100 times, finishing each other's sentences. And then slowly, you start talking less. The conversations grow shorter. The space between you fills with silence, not because of anger, but because of routine. You still live together, still care for one another, still share a bed. But something sacred begins to fade. Not the love itself, but the expression of it. Physical. Intimacy, in its most honest form, is one of the threads that keeps two people tied to each other emotionally. Not just through sex, but through every small gesture that says, "I'm still here with you." The kiss on the cheek before sleep. The hand on the back in the kitchen. The knowing look across the room. When those gestures go missing, when the physical connection slips into absence, even the most devoted relationships can begin to feel like quiet partnerships rather than living, breathing unions. You function, you cooperate, but the spark, playfulness, softness, curiosity, starts to disappear. And it's not because time erases love. It's because time, when left unchecked, can cover love with layers of distance. What people often forget is that sex, affection, and physical closeness are not extras. They're glue. They are the spaces where vulnerability lives. They're how you remember who you are to each other when life becomes too busy, too hard, or too familiar. And when that glue fades, even a decades-long bond can start to unravel, not in conflict, but in quiet disconnection. But here's the good news. That unraveling isn't permanent. Touch can still rebuild what time has worn down. Even a single moment of connection can remind you why you chose each other in the first place. It's not about grand romance or trying to recreate youth. It's about presence, reaching again. Not because things are broken, but because they're still worth holding on to. Because relationships are not sustained by memory or obligation. They are renewed again and again by the courage to reach for one another, even when you've grown older, even when you've grown quiet, even when it's been a long time. Intimacy brings us back, not just to our partner, but to ourselves. Within that relationship, it's how we say, even after all these years, I still see you, I still want you, and I still choose you. Final part. The body is wise. It remembers what you teach it and quietly releases what you no longer use. Just like a muscle that shrinks without movement or a voice that softens without song, your capacity for intimacy can fade if left untouched. But that fading is not failure. It's not the end. It's simply the body's way of asking to be remembered. Because the truth is, your body still knows how to feel, your heart still knows how to open, and your spirit still longs to be touched, not just in physical ways, but in ways that say, you're here, you matter, you're still alive. Whether you've been alone for years or lying beside someone you haven't really felt close to in a long time, it is not too late to begin again. You don't need to perform. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to turn back time. You only need to return to yourself, to your breath, to the quiet part inside you that still wants closeness, still wants comfort, still wants to be seen. And it starts with something so small, it's easy to dismiss. A hand held for just a few seconds longer, a shared moment of eye contact, a soft conversation late at night, the courage to say, I miss us, or even just, I miss being touched. And if you're single, know this. Intimacy is not limited to couples. It begins with the relationship you build with your own body, with how gently you speak to yourself, with how intentionally you care for your physical needs, emotional longings, and moments of stillness. Self-connection is not a substitute for love. It's the foundation of it. And from that place, everything else becomes possible again. Because aging isn't about disappearing. It's about becoming. Becoming more present, more honest, more real. It's about stripping away the noise and stepping into the most meaningful version of love you've ever known, the kind rooted in truth, not time. So tonight, when the house is quiet and the lights are low, ask yourself gently, what part of me have I left behind that's still waiting to come back to life? If you hear even the faintest whisper inside, follow it. Let it lead you to the small, brave steps that reconnect you to love, to touch, to the experience of being alive, not someday, not when things are better, but now. This moment is yours. You are not past your time. You are not too old. You are ready for a new kind of closeness. One that comes not from youth, but from truth, from presence, from the wisdom of a life deeply lived. If this message touched something in you, share it. Not because it's mine, but because it might be what someone else needs to hear to begin again. Leave a word in the comments. Hope, healing, love, whatever your heart offers. Your voice might be the light someone else needs tonight. And remember, you are still here, still capable, still beautiful, still whole, and still worthy of the kind of intimacy that makes life feel sacred, even in its simplest forms.